Hello and welcome to this presentation of Air Idaho Charters. As you can see, the company is made up of 25 positions. This was a requirement for the assignment, and fortunately those 25 positions fit perfectly into the organizational chart that I made. At the top you will have the CEO. That will be myself, Earl Stonebreaker. Below that person you'll have three positions that are more or less administrative and office positions. The first will be the accounting and finance person. The other will be the public relations and advertising person. And in addition to them, you have the administrative assistant and flight scheduler position. Moving down, you will have the flight communications manager, if you see them on the left-hand side of the chart, right over here. Below them, you will have 4 flight controllers. Besides that, you see the Eastern Base Commander. Under that person, you will have 3 fixed-wing pilots. Then you have the Southwest Base Commander and 3 pilots under that person. And then you have the Northern Sector Base Commander and 3 pilots under them. So the last section is our maintenance section. You will have the maintenance supervisor, and below them you will have a flight mechanic assigned to each of the 3 sectors. This chart represents the equity of the company. Starting on the lower right hand corner right here is the CEO, who will own 7% of the company. Moving clockwise, you have board member 1, 2, 3, and 4, each of which will also own 7% of the company. Continuing on, you have investors who would represent 30%, and also combined with the unissued stocks of 33%. So those two are more or less combined into available stocks. Anybody, including employees and board members, are more than welcome to buy these shares. Each are $1 a piece. The employee section right over here, the last section, it represents 2% ownership of the company. As far as the 2% goes, I'll explain that in another slide. This table represents the same information that was shown on the pie chart on the last slide. At the top you have the CEO with 7% of ownership equity, and then you have the board members below that. Underneath them you have the unissued stocks at 33% and the stocks that are already invested at 29.5%. Below that you have the employee section, which represents 2.5% of the company. Once an employee comes on board, 20% of their initial base pay is invested into the company by the company itself. So if somebody would make $100,000, $20,000 investment is made by the company, and if that person would leave after 5 years, then whatever the value of those stocks are at the time, they may keep. They also have the option to continue keeping that money in the investment in order to try to gain more money. This table represents the salary breakdown for the positions within the company. At the top you'll see a few of the months: March, April, May, and June, and then you'll have year 1 and year 2 on the last 2 columns on the right hand side. Starting off with the CEO position, they will make $120,000 the first year. It is not expected that that position will get a raise for the first few years until the revenue stream is strong enough to make sure the company will sustain itself. Below that you have 3 other administrative positions: the accounting finance position, public relations and advertising, as well as the administrative assistant and flight scheduler. They will each start off at $35,000 a year. Underneath that you have the pilots. The base commanders will start off at $110,000 a year. The pilots will then start at $96,000 per year. As you can see, the northern base commander as well as 3 of the pilot positions are zeroed out for the first year. The reason for that is the northern base will not be open for at least 1 year, possibly 2 years, and that will be based upon the revenue stream and how busy the flights are, as well as what the demand is in that particular area. That part of the state is not as populated. However, you have Spokane, Washington, and Seattle, which are both relatively short flights from that area. And you also have Bozeman and Missoula, Montana, which are relatively big tourist areas for the Northwest. So those areas may be busy enough to require a base in the northern area of the state eventually. Underneath them, you see the communications section. Communications manager will start off at $45,000 a year. Below them, you have the flight controllers, who will start off at $35,000 per year. The maintenance section in green is the last section. The supervisor will start off at $60,000 a year, and the mechanics will all start at $50,000 a year. The third mechanic position is zeroed out for the same reason as the pilots and the base commander. That mechanic position will be dedicated to the northern base once that opens. So once that time comes that we feel that we're busy enough to open the base, we will bring on board the northern base commander, 3 pilots, and the mechanic for that area. If you look at year 2, you'll see that those salaries are higher, and we are anticipating that everybody will get a 3% raise each year. Of course, it's based on their performance, but being a smaller company, you should be able to oversee the people and ensure that they're doing their job properly to make sure that they get that 3% raise. We will do a brief description of each of the positions now. Starting off as the very top of the chain will be the CEO. That will be myself, Earl Stonebreaker. The job description, basically they're in charge of all operating aspects of the company, and they're also in charge of making sure that the company is financially stable. They'll be required to attend all the board meetings and staff meetings as well. They will be available to staff members of the company at all times. In other parts of this assignment, it was described that this is an open door company. If anybody needs anything, the CEO is available to them. Qualifications and skills. They must have a business degree, which is currently being obtained, master's degree eventually. They must have a minimum of a private pilot's license, which I am also working on at the time, so I will meet those requirements. I do have strong people skills and business skills, and I do have management experience with most being about 100 people underneath of me when I worked at a hospital a few years ago. Managerial role, again, that position will oversee all staff. Directly, though, they will oversee the administrative staff, the base commanders, maintenance supervisor, and the flight communications manager. Those positions will then have people underneath of them. In that position, I will be in charge of hiring decisions along with other people who attend interviews, and I will also be in charge of handing out any disciplinary actions if needed and terminating employees if that ever needs to come about. The accounting and finance officer, that position will be in charge of the financial well-being of the company. They're going to be assisting the CEO. They will also be attending all of the board meetings, so that way the information that is needed about the finances is available when the people want to know about it. They are required to have a business degree. That's pretty important to somebody who wants to work with finances. It can be an accounting degree or something like that, but something in relation to business. They do have to have some type of experience working in accounting or with money of some sort, and they also must have strong people and business skills. This position does not oversee any other people. The public relations and advertising person is the one that's in charge of making sure that our company is known. They'll be in charge of website advertising, running our website. They'll also be in charge of social media and posting things like that. They'll also have to attend conferences throughout the year, so whether they're business conferences to advertise our services, or whether they're flight conferences to discuss aircraft and safety and things like that. They'll go to those conferences and bring that information back to the company. This person must have a marketing degree, whether it's an associate's or a bachelor's. They also must have experience working in a marketing type position. Due to the fact that they will be out meeting people and representing the company, they must have very good people skills and business skills as well. This person will also not oversee any other positions. The administrative assistant position is more or less in charge of the day-to-day operations of the company, the daily routine tasks. They may also assist the other two administrative positions if needed. This person is also in charge of scheduling all the flights. They will have to confirm with the customers that the flights are good to go, and they will also do the flight releases to the flight crews. So if a person is scheduled to fly on a Monday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that morning they're going to be in charge of ensuring that the people are still booked and that they have confirmed that flight. And they will be in charge of making sure that the pilot is aware of that flight for the day. This person must have a business degree. An associate's degree is preferred, and they may have a bachelor's, that's fine as well. They must have some type of experience working in an administrative position. They have to be well organized. We can't afford to have a scheduler miss having a pilot fly to a destination to pick up a client. That's something that we just can't have in the company. They must also have strong people skills because they're going to be working with these customers and just talking to them. This position does not oversee any others. The flight communications manager, who will hopefully be Regina Etheridge. This person will be tracking and dispatching aircraft. They'll have an office area that they'll be able to look on a screen and see where the aircraft are. They'll have to fill shifts as needed to ensure that there's continuous coverage. So if somebody calls off, somebody has to be tracking these flights. They must have strong communication skills. This position will be talking on the radio, whether it happens to be to air traffic control or to our aircraft. So they must have very good communication skills. They have to have some type of prior management experience due to the fact that they will be overseeing other people. An associate's degree is preferred, but that's something that we can look past if they have the experience that we're looking for. Again, as a manager, they will be directly overseeing the flight controllers. The flight controller position, they will be responsible for tracking the aircraft as well. More or less, they will be the ones who have the primary role of tracking the aircraft and communicating. The flight control manager, they are the ones that will be stepping in if needed to fill shifts for call-offs, for vacation time, and things like that. Both positions are required to be familiar with all of our communications equipment, and they also know they must know the emergency procedures if an aircraft loses contact or if there is a missed communication. Our aircraft will have 15-minute checks while airborne, so every 15 minutes our flight controllers will be checking in to see their status. These people also must have really good attention to detail as well as excellent communication skills. These positions are not managerial and they do not oversee any other positions. The sector-based commander is responsible for all operations within their area. So as of right now, we have 3 areas that we're anticipating putting in service. Southwest base will be based out of Caldwell, which is just west of Boise, Idaho. Chad Jones is anticipated to be the base commander for that region. One, because it is our main hub, and that's going to be our central base. Chad is a fantastic pilot and has extensive experience flying helicopter and fixed-wing aircraft as well. This person is also in charge of making sure that the crew is ready, them, as well as the mechanic is ready if needed. They work directly with the maintenance staff to make sure that the aircraft is ready to go at all times. They also work with their pilots to ensure that they're up to date with all their training, and the base commander, when available, they will be flying along with the pilots during some of the charter flights. This position is required to have a commercial pilot's license. That's required by the FAA for anybody who is flying to make money, more or less. They have to have good decision-making skills as a manager. They also have to have 1,000 hours of flight time, pilot in charge, and 250 hours of that must be night. They must have or obtain a rating for the aircraft that we have for the company. Again, this person is going to be in a managerial role. They'll oversee the pilots at their base, but they will also somewhat be in charge of the mechanics in their base as well, because that person will be in the same geographic region. The flight mechanic supervisor, the person in charge of the flight mechanics, will be based out of the southwest sector, um, so he may not be directly available at the time that the mechanic may need them. Um, so the flight mechanic in the northern sector may have to refer to his sector-based commander to talk to him about an issue he may be having. Fixed-wing pilots are in charge of flying aircraft. They're in charge of making sure the aircraft is ready to go at all times and to make sure that it is safe to fly. They're the ones that are making the decisions whether to fly or not. If they have a scheduled flight, there may be a weather issue that may have them delay the flight. They're the ones that have to make the final decision on that. These people also must have a commercial pilot's license, as well as the flight time, um, and good customer service. These people will be the face of the company when they pick up the customers from the airports and drop them off. So they must have excellent customer service. This position is not managerial and does not oversee anybody. All right, the maintenance section is the last one we'll talk about. The maintenance supervisor is in charge of the three maintenance, the flight mechanics under him. His job is to ensure that the fleet is ready to go at all times. There are times that an aircraft may have to be out of service for a few days for maintenance. That's not uncommon. Aircraft are maintenance heavy, and there are things that are required that have to be torn apart after so many hours of use or so many hours of being in service. So that's up to them to ensure that the planes are moved around accordingly, and that if there's going to be a plane out of service for maintenance, that he communicates that with the flight scheduler. This person has to be very well organized, just due to the nature of what we do. Flying is very dangerous inherently, and this person must be able to be organized and make sure they do their job very well. They must have 2 to 3 years of aircraft maintenance experience, and management experience is preferred. This person will directly oversee the flight mechanics. I'm looking to get Howard Wilson on as the maintenance supervisor. He has extensive experience in aircraft maintenance, is very well organized, and he is very, very knowledgeable. So he would be the ideal candidate for this position. All right, lastly is the flight mechanic. They will work with the flight mechanic supervisor, the maintenance supervisor, to ensure that the aircraft are good to go at all times. They are responsible for the aircraft in their sector. Even though they have a manager, his job is to make sure that they have what they need. It's their job as a flight mechanic to ensure that aircraft is safe to fly. If they see any issues that they assume that it's going to be down for a day or two, they must contact the flight mechanic supervisor and discuss that with him to ensure that the aircraft will be listed out of service and there won't be any scheduled flights for it. During longer maintenance periods, sometimes you have longer breakdowns of the aircraft, so you might have to have a 12-month check, which requires that you take engines off and things like that. In that case, the aircraft will be staggered for those, so the flight mechanic supervisor will be available to go to that base to assist with that. It's a big task for one person to do, and by having the second mechanic available, we can get the aircraft back in the air that much faster. This person must have their airframe and power plant license, which is issued by the FFA or the FAA. I apologize. So they must have the knowledge of how to fix the aircraft. The A&P license also applies to their supervisor. They must have that as well. This person must also have really good attention to detail, and they must be well organized. This position is not overseeing any others. As far as my exit strategy goes, once I am ready for retirement, I would step back and let somebody else go into the role of CEO, and I would not be involved in day-to-day operations. I would still sit on the board of directors, and be involved with the company in the direction it's headed. Obviously, with the experience I would have within the company, I would be a valuable asset to have around, when they're looking to move forward, expand, or whatever they may do. Having that knowledge would be very helpful to them. I would also continue flying with the pilots to make sure that my pilot's license is up to date. It's a hefty investment for somebody to get their license, and that's something that I don't want to lose. So I would obviously continue flying with them. I'd be content not making any money doing so, just being able to fly along to keep my hours up. And it's cheaper than renting a plane, so that would be my exit strategy. Eventually, once I am really ready for retirement, I would step away completely, most likely looking to, you know, open something else up in another part of the country or another part of the world. Thank you for listening to the presentation, and I hope it was valuable.